Honestly, I'm really not sure if this is unpopular or not because I do not often come across much evaluation of Red Velvet albums, but if I'm ever looking at people speaking of their favorite Red Velvet B-sides, there are often a good amount of Red Summer tracks popping up here and there, but I don't know, maybe my brain is broken because I just can't get like any of these songs to click well for me. I did really enjoy Zoo at one point, mostly due to how fun it is to be honest, but after looking more into the rest of Red Velvet's discography I rarely find myself returning to it, or any of the songs on this album. Perhaps Hear the Sea, that one slaps. I really like delicate and smooth songs like that. But yeah, overall, maybe I just hate fun. Maybe I need to get my ears checked, but the Red Summer is just a mediocre time for me. My sincerest apologies, Red Summer enthusiasts. Although as you will see later, some of Red Velvet's albums with smaller track lists do manage to rank high, it would just be a plain lie if I didn't state that they were at a disadvantage, and that is exactly how I feel about this album right here. Although I do not have a problem with any of the tracks on this album, like All Right is literally one of my favorite Red Velvet songs ever, and Bad Boy is just iconic. So I feel like with some more original tracks, this album could have ranked much higher, but then there is Time to Love, which yes is a really pretty song, just doesn't stack up for me in comparison to some other Red Velvet slow songs, and with it being 1/3 of the album, I can't really put it much higher. Damn.
Sappy boy, 그래서 지연 boy, such a sappy boy. Come on boy, yeah, Sappy yeah.
This Sappy mini album has suffered a similar fate to the perfect Red Velvet, as with such a minimal track list it is hard to rank much higher than the bottom unless I really love all of the tracks, which in this case, I do not. Oof. And although I don't quite like my favorite track on this album, which will soon be revealed, as I do my favorite track on the previous album, the overall quality of song on this album is just higher all around for me. Did not expect to be doing maths for a video about K-pop albums, but goddamn I was calculating averages and whatnot to figure out whether Sappy or the perfect Red Velvet should be ranked higher. Damn you 3-track albums, you are the bane of my existence. I feel so cruel placing such banging tunes so low. Well, I mean title track wise, this album has a lot going for it and I don't care if it is basic or whatever. I believe in psycho supremacy in most cases. It really is that song and word. The album that accompanied it was also delightful. In and Out is definitely a standout to many people and I can totally see why its lyrics are so odd, but I love it. It's somehow a love song that also teaches you a fun recipe to a cake. I swear Red Velvet's metaphors are just beyond me. But yes, I also am kind of obsessed with how different the original tracks on this album are from each other. Like they are all definitely Velvet songs, but we got a hip-hop baking track, a delightful little ballad, and an oh-so-magnificent sexy-styled track that takes me right back to the second generation. It's a really pleasant listen, but once again it just falls low because it can't compare with some of their other albums. La Rouge still one of their best songs though, and I live by that. This is one of the Red Velvet albums that took me a while to come around to. I just wasn't a fan of any of the B-sides except maybe Sunny Side Up, and I didn't even like Simsalabim. I know, how tasteless, but since then my ears have clearly developed and I can now recognize that this album is actually just banging, I swear. Like every song has its own unique charm and are just so intensely fun in such different ways. This album really encapsulates how creativity can go a long way, as I really couldn't see many other groups releasing like any of these songs, especially not all in the same EP. Red Velvet are just on some other planet. They must be. This album somehow just works despite feeling a little disjointed at times. I kinda love that chaotic nature of the track list though, it somehow just adds to the experience of these wacky tracks. Now don't shoot me, but I really just don't gel with Ice Cream Cake as a song, and so going into this album I had incredibly low expectations, and coming out the other end, I was very much pleasantly surprised because what? It's like mostly R&B, and Red Velvet R&B tracks are simply to die for. This entire album just feels so velvet, and like how the concept originally started out, with these smooth 90s-esque R&B tracks all sung in such a sweet yet sultry way. Even with Stupid Cupid, which has this great playful and electronic beat, it still feels somewhat sexy in nature, and I just adore how they play with concept boundaries like that. This album is just such a fantastic listen through and through, and it is definitely one of the ones I recommend to new fans.
And we're live. Produced by the colleagues. Take one.
Yeah.
This album is often highly regarded as one of Red Velvet's best, and honestly, I can't fault them for that, as this album really is something special. And although, yes, we are still in the lower half of this ranking, you can see how highly I have spoken about some of the past albums, so this album is definitely fantastic despite not beating out some of Red Velvet's other albums for me. For this album, I do find myself enjoying the brighter tracks over the darker ones, like as much as I do enjoy Body Talk and Little Little and whatnot. Happily Ever After, man, Talk to Me. I just love those tracks so much, especially paired with Rookie as a title track. Just the absolute perfect songs for a quick pick-me-up. Guaranteed to put me in a bangin' mood. For a K-pop stan who typically isn't a huge fan of ballads, I weirdly adore this primarily ballad-based album. There is just something about the Velvet album that I just can't shake. It is so gorgeous. From the more sexy songs like Light Me Up and Cool Hot Sweet Love that I would expect myself to like to the totally orchestral ballad tracks like Rose Scent Breeze and One of These Nights that I would normally stray away from, everything is just down and wow, so gorgeous. I guess Red Velvet just really know how to do ballads as they always feel so intentional, and not just like a slow song throwaway that is thrown in there to diversify an album that I see far too often. My god, everyone please get up and listen to Rose Scent Breeze, even if you don't normally like ballads, because as a usual disliker of ballads, this song really does something to me, man. And it's not even my number one track. This album is just so top tier and yet is still so often slept on. Okay, what the hell? Someone explain to me how their fourth comeback, Red Velvet, were not only releasing a full album but one of such high quality? This album is truly something to behold and I adore it so much. There are definitely some songs I like more than others, which is definitely a fault with longer albums as it is harder to get by with so many tracks and find yourself liking every single one. But I mean, this one is so close. There are only a couple tracks I would find myself skipping, mostly in the middle, but wow, what a strong start and ending with Cool World. Damn. Also, side note, because I just really want to talk about Huff and Puff for a second at least once on my channel because it is one of the most confusing songs I have ever heard. I can't get over how they made it so addicting. My god. Like, objectively, the basis for its instrumental is horrid and even a little cringe. Also, it is so simple, like lots of chants and monotone raps, so I mean, what really is there to like? And yet, it's one of my favorite songs on the album, possibly even in their discography. How does that work? Are there drugs in it? What is going on? This album just bangs. This album is such a fantastic concept album, if you get me. It has this consistent and unique 50s oompapa, fitting I know, style just all over it, and it is just so refreshing to hear in K-pop, especially in recent years, as it can easily become incredibly repetitive, so something rather out there like this is just exactly what we need as a society. Also, it definitely helps that all of the songs are just certified tunes. I mean, Love Is The Way is one of the sweetest little tracks I have ever heard, and Eyes Locked, Hands Locked, just totally breathtaking, and man, that doesn't even scratch the surface of this impeccable track list. And can we just touch on how terribly underrated Oompa Oompa is? Wake up people, it is literally one of their best title tracks, on God. Man, I just adore this album. I mean, the name of this album is relatively spot on, as it truly is the perfect Velvet concept for me. This album is just through and through totally sophisticated and lush with clean sounding songs. It's just such a brilliant listening experience. I love how even though they do have their main two Red and Velvet concepts, every album has a totally different sound and concept, and I think this soundscape with Perfect Velvet is possibly my favorite of the lot. It just feels so mature yet delicate at the same time. This album gave us so many iconic Red Velvet tracks, like Look, I Just and Kingdom Come are the first 3 B-sides. When that is your opening, you know you got a banger of an album on your hands. Such an impressive piece of work that I need to listen to more often because man, it's been a while. Just reminded of its excellence. And we still on number 5 man. For such a wonderfully constructed and high-energy mini album, I swear to God it is paid absolute dust. I will never understand how this album remains so underrated, as it comes from arguably one of their most successful comebacks, and my personal favorite, Russian Roulette, and yet, these B-sides are let to rot, and for what? They are fantastic. This is probably one of the Red Velvet albums that I find myself constantly returning to, as I mean it's just so addicting, and all of the songs just give me this brilliant joyous feeling that I adore. Its bright and joyous sound is probably my favorite part, one of the best Red Velvet albums from Red Velvet for sure. I could literally write a whole essay on how much I love each of these individual tracks, and goddamn, I will. Oh, how sweet. It is the first ever Red Velvet album I ever listened to the whole way through, and boy did I start with a good one. I just adore this summery direction they went on with this one, and although I placed its sister Summer Mini the Red Summer so low, I can recognize how well Red Velvet do a summer concept, and that is perfectly shown on this album. I adore how many of the tracks on this album pull from different summery aspects to build upon their soundscapes, creating these vibrant and detailed environments in each and every track. Like MRE just sounds like a tropical rainforest, and you can't debate me on that. I also adore the experimentation we find on this album too. For example, the odd composition and lyricism found in Mosquito that somehow creates this intensely catchy and unforgettable track akin to Huff and Puff. This album as a whole is just so fun. What else can I say? It just gets me in the summer mood, and in the best way possible. I told you small albums were not always going to be doomed in the bottom positions. As here we are, in second place, the silver medal, Red Velvet's first Japanese mini, the 3-track wonder, #Cookie Jar. Wow, it was impossible for me to not rank this album right up at the top, as it gave me 2 of my ultimate favorite Red Velvet songs of all time, and back-to-back to in its mod-infused title track #Cookie Jar and the legendary kawaii bass track A Tai Tai. It's impossible to ignore this album when it did that, and then was still able to deliver an adorable little ballad in Cause It's You, which stands as one of my favorite Red Velvet ballads to date. Its intentional subtlety and delicate vocals are just so calming, and is somehow the perfect closer to this sweet triplet. 4. Being only 3 songs long, this album truly makes such an impact and somehow beats out all of their full-length albums for me. It's just so special. And we've made it. It's been a treacherous journey, but we're finally here at number 1, and you already know, it's gotta be RBB. Another one of their more underrated albums, I believe. Probably just due to the fact that many didn't really enjoy the title track, which I mean, can't relate. It's one of my favorites of theirs along with Russian Roulette, so that's already a great start for this album. And then boom, the B-sides. And my god, these B-sides, each and every one of them deserves an award. I'm on. The whole production on this thing is insane. This album sounds so sweetly retro while also sounding so futuristic at the same time, like it was produced on Venus or something after some aliens discovered Britney Spears. Such an odd way to describe it, but like, it had to be said. But wow, from the girls too? This album is just perfect, and I love how we were able to see them experiment with different vocal styles on this album too. Just goes to show how vocally talented Red Velvet are, as in most K-pop albums we are greeted with the same clear vocal style the whole way through, which I mean is no problem. Red Velvet themselves do this often too, but the raspiness in Sassy Me, and then these romantic whisper-like vocals in Butterflies. Man. And side note, this masterpiece was not only the product of my first comeback standing Red Velvet, but it was also released on my goddamn birthday, so yes, it does get special love points from me. But even without that, I truly believe this album would still fall at number 1 for me because of wow. Everyone, go listen to the RBB Mini Album right now.